As humanity is ready once again to head out into the stars, we need to understand the first step in all of this is exploring our own neighborhood first. Currently, we are not all too sure what may be within our very own solar system. Is there evidence of fossilized life on Mars? Is Titan really just a primordial Earth that will change with Earth-like conditions forming during the sun's red giant phase? Is there liquid water under Europa's crust? All questions that need to be understood before moving forward, as we need to establish civilizations somewhere else besides just Earth. And to do so, we need to prepare ourselves as much as possible. In the events of the Europa report, just that was attempted to be done. As a manned crew is sent further out than any other human has ever been, they are tasked with landing on a small section of Europa's crust that is considered to be hotter than it should be. However, what are the physiological impacts to the human meat suit to actually get there? What did they discover, and what would it mean for the future of how we approach everything? Well, let's discuss all of that today, covering the movie Europa Report. We kick off our story with like 32 production companies. Essentially, the Europa 1 mission was our first attempt at sending men and women into deep space. As we see a man climbing down the ladder, there's a lot of packaging here, which you may be asking why. Well, it goes beyond just food acquisition. As we will discuss more in depth here in a moment, your body quite literally degrades in space for several reasons. Our biology is not compatible with spaceflight, but you know what our biology technically isn't compatible with either? That's right, being the absolute tippy top of the food chain. That's why we have such large brains to figure out problems that our biology can't. Human hubris for the win. Anyhow, it's important to understand that this ship is traveling at roughly 38,000 miles per hour, and even at those speeds, it would take just over 600 days for us to reach Jupiter. Within a microgravity environment as such, bisphosphonates, medications, and also pretty much the type of food that you eat are all gonna prevent and help treat bone loss, as well as, working out, I guess. And this will keep your body at least somewhat functional for when you return from space. Back to the movie, another man then sends a video back to his family, and he talks about how he cannot even see Earth anymore, but it's still peaceful, allegedly. Sending it back to the family should be there in like 20 minutes, given he cannot see Jupiter yet, and I believe that he just passed Mars. A man then asks what happens if they get out there and then find nothing. Well, then it's a free moon. It's ours. That would be a discovery in of itself, because that means even if water is on another world, it doesn't necessarily mean life will spring up. So they get a call as the cameras then start cutting out and the feed is lost. The alarms start going off and something comes up on screen. Those were the last images received from the Europa 1 craft. How did we solve the solar radiation issue of ionizing problems? Well, I can answer my own question now. Water shielding. You would need about 13.8 feet of water to actually shield from gamma radiation, although water is excellent at also stopping incoming protons and neutrons. Alternatively, you would need about 6.6 feet of concrete or about 1.3 feet of lead to do the same job. In heathen units, that's 4.2 meters, 2.01 meters, and 0.39 meters, respectively. Who uses metric though? Absolutely no one. A woman gives a report on the Europa 1 mission, as in they comb through the footage that they have just acquired, determined to figure out what went down. Also, this is Miss Honey from Matilda, right? It is. Oh my god. So jumping back to the crew, they talk about how they have to tell their family they're officially alone up there and on their own. They talk about if they should even continue the mission or not, which, I mean, what choice do you have, right? Sure, you could always turn this thing around, but you are already out there. The biggest thing is just you can't talk to Earth as readily. Miss Honey then starts talking about how she was on a plane when the feed went dark. By the time she got to mission control, the feed had already been dead for around 15 hours. A man named James was lost, as the crew is now distraught over his passing. Yes, but how did he pass? I assure you, in one of the most easily solvable ways possible. This is why I guess they didn't let me on the ship in this fictional mission that by the time we actually do achieve this, I'll be too old anyways. It has been 7 months into their journey, and man, this ship is hauling it out there. As a woman checks on another man named Andre, he hasn't said anything in like a week, as then she speaks Russian to him. He says something back, but he's Russian, so I can't understand it. Another woman then talks about how she woke up and she didn't recognize herself, which I have no idea what that even means, because there is no sign of neural degradation in any of this. It is now 8 months into the mission. They are closer to Jupiter, but still quite a great distance away. Miss Honey then talks about how she assumed the mission was still going on, but really, they had no idea if potentially the ship just blew up or was hit by a rogue asteroid. They just didn't know. What is it? Oumuamua or whatever it is, like the interstellar asteroid that could have been an alien ship. It could not be an alien ship. It just really depends on who you ask. That could have run into them. So at this point, it's been about a year since they lost James due to his own inability to think for 3 seconds. And now we are at 19 months, 10 days, and 14 hours since they left, as we now jump back to the mission start. Get used to this. It's gonna be all over the place. Everyone is super jazzed to be there and excited to start this wonderful mission. They allege that this is a new step for mankind as Miss Honey keeps talking about how an unmanned mission just wouldn't have cut it. So they kick the tires and light the fires as the crew is then sent up towards Europa. Miss Honey's company was tasked with leaving off where the space race had left off in 1972. Everyone celebrates a successful launch as they start playing the Blue Danube Waltz, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, which is a standard for being in space. I think this is fair use. Let me look that up. Oh, it is. All right, cool. Greg, play this in the background during my entire discussion of that. Anyways, so that's what you play when you're in space. It has now been 2 days, 3 hours, and 27 minutes. The alarm clock goes off, waking up everyone, as luckily for these guys, Katy Perry's music doesn't play here, as she wasn't around yet, and Blue Origin hadn't transported her to space either. We were fools to believe it would last forever. What a topical reference, Roanoke. See, if I make fun of myself first, I can't get blasted in the comments. That's actually a lie. I get blasted in the comments anyways. In this dissertation, I will explain why I am rubber and you are glue. As a man gives a tour of the crew areas, he also talks about how our bones and muscles become weak in space, which you may be wondering, why is that? Well, let's discuss. The problem with microgravity is there just isn't enough of it. As you enter the environment, the limitations of human physiology become quite apparent. Our species, every piece of life on this rock, everything that makes us, formed on this planet, and as a result, our bodies are so intrinsically adjusted to only this world that there's really no way for our meat suits to functionally adjust to space long term. In fact, it's been said that Earth emits a low frequency wave that you can't really hear. You can detect it, you just can't hear it, but your bodies can feel it. And when you get outside of its range, people start getting really anxious. So astronauts who aren't afraid to be in space are basically just operating on a baseline function of I am super anxious all the time because their bodies literally cannot feel the Earth. But humans are highly adapted. Like if you take different environments on Earth, we can adjust. Our skin may become darker or lighter, our hair may become more fine or more coarse, our blood types might change, our stature concerning height might vary, but at the end of the day, we are still Homo sapiens adapting to the constraints of this world and have been doing just that for a very long time. Space is a whole different ballgame. It's just the absolute hostile area being just feet away from you at all times. It's not just how like everything is bathed in radiation, it still penetrates our ships to this day, exposing astronauts to radiation levels much higher than they should be dealing with. It's the very force of the universe in different amounts that affects our physiological processes. As you exist within a microgravity environment, the biggest problems you are going to come really to are going to be two of them, but there also are other ones that are less concerning, but still fairly problematic, I suppose you could say. Bone density loss and muscle atrophy are the big two. Your bones have struck a comfortable balance with Earth for around 60 to 70 years. After that, it goes a little awry. But in space, due to the constant pressure of gravity being absent, your bones will begin to degrade. But why? Well, you have two forms of cells that are involved in reshaping bones, which is fantastic normally, as tiny little cracks can form in them from you using them, and if not constantly reshaped and repaved, so to speak, they could form larger breaks, which could end up actually snapping the bone. Osteoclasts are dealt with the responsibility of breaking down the bone. In doing so, they pave the way for osteoblasts to come in and repair the bone by having them reform. This process helps repair bone before it even becomes a larger issue down the line. These two processes are constantly working. They never stop. When you remove gravity, the osteoclasts are still working, but the osteoblasts are less stimulated to engage in their work as the stresses they are normally, attuned to, or at least the bone is under, it's no longer present. And this will lead to a continual breakdown of the bone, making them weaker and weaker over the ensuing months. Muscle suffers the same fate. Given that the forces are no longer on them, such as maintaining posture, lifting things, including your own arms and legs, and manipulating things within the environment, which also puts stress on the bone, which, just so you know, if you jump up, I think it's like 2 feet and you weigh like 200 pounds, something like 1,000 PSI is applied to your bones. But the muscle tissue is essentially told that it's really no longer necessary as it starts breaking down and atrophying. And this will leave a person weaker over time. Weaker bones and weaker muscles. Not a great thing for our species, given that we have to come back to Earth at some point. Interestingly, though, one of the kind of thought experiments is what really will happen if we as a species stay on other planets or in gravity or low gravity worlds. It's very likely our heads will become so large that we cannot have natural births, and then our limbs will become even smaller. Well, basically, turn into the grays, which is a bit strange. But also, interestingly enough, we are now finding other systems continue to break down and become lethargic in space. Your immune system takes a huge hit. Microgravity environments as well tend to make them less active. And these factors surrounding are like radiation and the stress of being in space. It appears to impair the functioning of T cells, natural killer T cells, and possibly even B cells, which produce antibodies. Because of this, dormant viruses such as herpes can flare up. Skin rashes occur quite often, and in general, the first few weeks that anyone may have had a cold, it can actually come back. Now, there are two ways to mitigate these problems, but it's not perfect. For muscle and bone preservation, highly nutritious meals are needed as well as vitamins. Working out with resistance training is absolutely essential, not just recommended, like you have to do it. However, the issue is working out for an hour can never really replace literally 24 hours a day of like constant pressure from gravity of this planet. So while it slows down degradation of bone and muscle, it doesn't stop or reverse it. Except for me, I'd be built completely different. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. Actually, we have seen one benefit of going in space for a prolonged amount of time. There was a guy who went up for like, I think it was like 200 days or something like that. He had a twin brother. It may have not been 200 days. It may have been less than that. But anyways, he had a twin brother. And by the time he came back, his telomeres on his cells were actually longer, which telomeres are considered to be the junk DNA, which they're not junk DNA. They actually have very important, like actual genes in them. So it's not just complete junk. But every time your cell undergoes mitosis, a little bit of this gets cut off. So the fact that they extended in space meant possibly, if it came down to just a genetic issue of being in space, you might be able to survive longer than if you were on Earth. Then again, it also makes sense because more pressure on your body on a planet versus being in space, you're gonna die quicker. But there's this idea that prevails for it's quite some time, like why don't we just spin the ship? That comes up a lot. Well, it's important to remember the smaller the ship, the faster it has to spin, which can actually induce greater forces on the craft, causing them to break. Along with that, the human inner ear is not so easily fooled. If you were standing upright, you would feel fine. The gravity was below you. But if you turned your head towards the ground, this would actually change the force on the head, and this could actually induce nausea. You basically become unbalanced, and then you just eat it. The best way to proceed is possibly with a large ship over 600 feet in diameter or around 200 meters in diameter that spins more slowly. This would provide the gravity that your body could adapt to the spinning sensation more readily. But a small ship like this that they are in Europa 1, no shot. So going to a window, they look out into the inky black depth of space, and then they see stars. Passing the moon, we have officially gone further than we have ever traveled before. And as they talk at a press conference, wait a minute, is that Randy Daytona from Balls of Fury? Dude, this movie has like the most random actors and actresses. So Mr. Daytona talks about how Europa has water on it under the ice. There were heat signatures under certain areas, and basically it's just a bunch of press conferences from here and interviews about finding the potential for life. So continuing on, it's just about going through the daily tasks of keeping your bones and muscles strong. The captain sends back a response on the radio. As almost immediately he gets an answer back, which immersion broken. This would take much longer than you might imagine. Like they basically have jumped forward in time. So based on what I'm seeing, people in bed and all that stuff, it's been a few weeks. So let me do some math real quick. So let's say it's been roughly about 3 weeks. They are roughly 19,152,000 miles away at this point. And given the speed of light travels at 186,282 miles per second, that means they send the call out. It would probably take roughly about 102 seconds for that signal to reach Earth. At this point, we are talking like 4 seconds to process and respond to what they actually said, and then another 102 seconds for the response to get back. So like just sending a simple back and forth would take 3 minutes and 30 seconds for this entire conversation to take place. Someone check that math. I'm a biologist here, not a boring form of magician known as mathematician, so do with that what you will. So passing by Mars, man, they should have done a sister mission to this one and then just sent somebody else to stop there. Miss Honey continues with her press conference, going on with who they are and what they do and why they are super jazzed to be sent out into deep space for a couple of years. They go through their job titles as, oh no, one of the women is a marine biologist. God, basically, you're just asking to go hang out with an anglerfish. And look at you, you really thought this slander wouldn't continue because we are covering a space movie. You buffoon? Absolutely not. So here's the thing. We are heading to a water world in deep space of a moon. You know where something horrific would love to live that only a face a mother couldn't love and nobody else loves either? And I hate an anglerfish. Truth be told, it'd be a spanglerfish because it's a space anglerfish of space origins, but imagine signing up to go find one of these things on another world too. I will never understand marine biologists. You are a biologist, but we do not grant you the rank of scientist. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules, I just work here. So we officially get James's name, by the way. They just randomly drop it. He had issues in in District 9, he's going to have issues in this one as well. Well, it's now 12 months in, almost 13 months, and Jupiter is just over there. Hilariously, it looks like it's just over there. Jumping forward, it's now 19 months, and they're still a month away, and Jupiter is bigger, but that's how far away, that's actually how big Jupiter is. Like, it looks like they're pretty close to the planet. They're not, and they're going 38,000 miles per hour. So the captain says he's concerned about Andreas's recovery. He asks how he should be recovering exactly. He then climbs out of there as they talk about if they should take him down to the moon or not, but then again, they don't want to leave him alone in the orbiter for 3 weeks. Approaching Jupiter, their mission is set. The scientific community at large is here to settle the assumptions of humanity, which has been discussed from time immemorial to determine if girls actually go to Jupiter to indeed get more stupider. It is now 21 months in as they head towards Europa, clearing Jupiter's orbit and then launching the lander. Heading down to the LZ, they begin their entry as the landing gear is deployed, and then they hit a thermal vent upon re-entry. Well, not really re-entry, just entry. Man, tough break. This kind of wrecks everything. They're able to land as one of the seats is empty, and they begin clapping as they have landed on a foreign body this far out. Way to ruin it by clapping, guys. So as they look out, yep, that is a frozen surface for sure. Miss Honey continues crying while giving an interview. It is now 22 months in. The surface temperature, they claim, is absolute zero. Not so sure about that one. And let me tell you why I hate this. Absolute zero is the coldest point theoretically possible. This is when all movement and vibrations from atoms have ceased. The reality is we have not even found absolute zero or observed it as of yet. The Boomerang Nebula in space is one of the coldest known places in the universe, and it is still 1 degree above absolute zero. The background of space, just in general, is still 2.7 Kelvin, which is significantly warmer than absolute zero. So to suggest Europa, a moon which is still bathed in sunlight from our sun, has areas of absolute zero, definitely made me laugh. I know I sound like Neil deGrasse Tyson right now. Well, actually, everything you think sucks, and I'm right. But it's only because I became a microbiologist in order to become an astronaut back in the day. I was absolutely crushing anatomy courses. I was just bad at math, so like when things like this are said, it's like, what? All right, so shallow and pedantic rant aside, they landed 100 meters off the mark as Randy Daytona then tells us about the potential for life utilizing the lander's robotic arm. Also, that's like 300 feet from where they were supposed to land. Given the 548 million miles they had to fly to get there, pretty good hitting your mark. So anyways, they won't get the data very easily at their current position, so lamenting over it, they know key data is going to be lost on this mission. Releasing the silver bullet for Europa, it begins melting the ice as it descends. You would need so much energy to do this given the ice is allegedly absolute zero. It's insane. But heading down, they hear a creaking noise as the lander shakes. They think the ice may be shifting. Good point. Definitely not going to fall through or anything. They have not even been there a full day, claiming they know what's going on, as Andre then keeps working on something as the entire lander begins shaking again. The lander shakes once more, and then they finally agree, we don't actually know what's going on with the ice. So Andre then is looking out the window, filming something in the darkness. Yeah, that'd be horrifying. Running diagnostics, Andre then comes down saying he saw something, and then spotting something outside. He says it was about 100 meters out. A light on the ice shook and then ran off, as he claims to have said. He says it was bright though, like an LED. They ask if it moved, and he says yes. Checking the heat signatures, they check the footage, but then don't see anything that Andre saw. They ask if maybe could be bioluminescence or something. Then watching Andre, they see radiation interference on the camera. That said, how does the human eye react to radiation? Well, strap in. It has been seen before, and I believe we are seeing it now still, because I don't think we've really solved the issue, but astronauts since the drop have always reported strange flashes of light in their vision. The issue is shielding on the ship. Cosmic rays easily blast through the paneling that we have on our crafts. These high energy particles will pass through the eyes and then strike the retina. When they do, flashes of light can be seen. These are not hallucinations, but actually the interaction of the retina with these cosmic rays. And this is not a good thing. This is just the ones that you can see, and this is how you detect it. The reality is these particles are blasting through your brain, your heart, your bones, your lungs, everything, and you have really no way to detect it. So the reality is when it does hit the brain, this may cause a small amount of damage that obviously can build up over time. So radiation is not good, but when we see what is causing this to happen later, specifically on Europa, I believe I may have a way of explaining it. So as they keep lowering the silver bullet, it is now at 800 meters, 2,400 feet. Back in the past, James continues asking everyone questions about alien life, as we now jump forward once more where Andre is being told he needs to get some rest. He keeps working on stuff, but they're like, dude, go to sleep. You are our only engineer. They have now been there for around 3 days. The silver bullet is now at around 2,800 meters, or 8,200 meters. Just kidding, 8,400 meters. Yeah, that's right. So hearing a creaking noise, they finally broke through the surface and have now hit water. They turn on the camera and then they see that there is indeed liquid water down there. Horrific. It is completely untouched, or it was an untouched environment, and now it's very much so touched. Marine biologist then cries because water makes marine biologists cry for some reason, as radiation levels down there are minimal, probably due to the 2.8 kilometers of ice. I know, I hate it too, but they did go 2,800 meters. In the Lord's units, that's about 1.73 miles. Okay, now pilot that thing just 100 meters to the heat zone. The water also goes down over 100 kilometers, again, horrific, as then they go to grab samples on the ice to see if this is maybe bacteria that the sun is actually striking, because it does appear to penetrate the ice here, 2.8 kilometers down. Very unlikely. So hearing a noise, it almost sounds like a whale. They get a radiation spike as they see something in the video. The radiation is coming from the target zone, and as they approach, they see a light as another flashes, and they hear a high-pitched tone. They are beginning to run their tests as if they have lost control of the silver bullet. They play back the video as they think they saw something hit the probe. Alien anglerfish. Marine biologist is zoning out about the prospect of there being life here. So Ms. Honey continues talking, saying that the radiation from Jupiter causes the surface radiation to fluctuate greatly. The reason is actually due to Jupiter's ridiculously strong magnetic field that actually directs radiation from the sun and then accelerates it into the surrounding area, creating a radiation belt of sorts. It's important to remember also that Jupiter itself eventually could have become a sun had it gotten enough mass to do so. The next designation up from its current state, I believe, is a brown dwarf star, but again, it would need significantly more mass. But just know, it was pretty close. So Randy Daytona keeps talking about the surface cracking and re-cracking as everyone argues about whether or not they should do a surface walk to figure out what is right there. It's now back at 6 months and 16 days. The day James makes the dumbest decision of his life. James is sending a message back to his youngling and his family saying they don't know how hard it was going to be. Bro is absolutely tweaking. He then talks about how his son will be 6 by the time he sees him again. All the more reason to make sure you get back to him too. But at this point, the feed was lost that was actually being sent back to Earth. A solar storm hit and damaged their communication ability. Andre and James then head outside to do a spacewalk to go fix their communications. The ship is allegedly now moving at 125,000 miles per hour. I think they said this at this point, which I don't understand. Maybe they meant 25,000 miles per hour? Because again, Jupiter is 548 million miles away. At that speed, it would have only taken them 182 days to get to Jupiter, or around 6 months. So they would have actually been there by now. Don't worry about it, we're moving on. So they check the systems as James says he thinks it's a blown fuse in the communication panel. Opening the door, James looks at it and the receptors to basically receive radio signals are shot. Pulling on them, the second pin is stuck. Then he forces it open as the panel snaps and Andre's suit actually springs a leak, which these are really crappy suits. Like, we have gone back in time if these suits are the ones that they're using, because we have built-in pressure points to prevent full suit leaks like this. Currently, the suits astronauts use right now and have for a while utilize seals at the joints and in the helmet. Gloves, boots, plus pretty much everything else. They also have an impermeable layer to gas. The fact that this suit is leaking oxygen at a rate that threatens Andre is nothing short of hilarious. What's that? Your suit was penetrated at an area that quite literally is used to manipulate the environment around you, and it could definitely spring a leak? Oops, sorry, looks like you're totally boned and now your air is gone. Like, can you imagine? So entering the air chamber, they spot hydrazine on James's suit. He is absolutely covered in it. If they bring him in, then the air will become toxic inside. Well, here's an idea. Send in the damaged suit first, repressurize the cabin, bring him inside quickly, close the chamber, depressurize it, then send James in, repressurize it, let the hydrazine sublimate, and then vent it once more, and then repressurize. Are you guys telling me you can't just do this? My brother in Christ, what is happening? Everybody's problem-solving skills don't work. So they want to get James out of his suit in space so that he can get inside without it. It'll take less than 2 minutes, which you pass out after 15 seconds, and then you die roughly in about 90 seconds. So it could possibly be done if you hypersaturate your blood with oxygen by breathing heavily for around 40 breaths, and then blow all the air out of your lungs and then take your suit off. But deciding not to do that, he just pushes Andre in and then starts drifting out into space. Alright, he just drifts into the abyss. Andre survives as they say sorry to James, but now he gets to float off and die. Man, tough break. This guy quite literally died for no reason. You could have just held on to the side of the ship. On the outside of those doors are handles. Plus, you could have literally tethered yourself to one of the multiple attachment points. There was no need for you to do any of this. But because of his own stupidity and space madness, he keeps drifting. His air then runs out, And that's all she wrote on that. Like, dude will be drifting through space very likely till the end of time. All right, so Andre wakes up and screams, much like me. I guess me and a random Russian engineer aren't so different after all. Back on Europa, they argue about what to do on the surface. Some vote yes, to send the marine biologist just to get her off of the lander. Some vote no, as they might have to eat her. So it's a basic tie. And then they're like, okay, well, the last, I believe it's Rosa who cast the tie-breaking thing, like, no, get her out of here. So then she's sent out onto the surface. Strapping her suit on, she gets ready to walk out there, as evidently it now, at least with the lander, takes 30 minutes to depressurize the chamber. Opening the door, she steps out, immediately slips on the ice, cracking her visor, ending her, no, she doesn't. So the radiation out there isn't super high, but it's still radiation. 50 millisieverts per hour, 10 is considered to be safe, while about 100 is relatively safe, but it still comes with a slight increase in the possibility of developing cancer. Around 1,000 has observable health effects, and anything exceeding 10,000 is considered lethal. She then talks about how still it is out there. Yeah, now's not the time to talk about that. It's the time to get moving. To her, though, it's cosmically astounding. Like, if we ever truly become spacefaring, we will look back on stuff like this and be like, well, that was a little cringe. What was the big deal? Who knows? I guess it's a sort of, you had to be there type of deal. So walking from the ship, the ice begins shifting as then she makes her way over. Taking sample, she sends it back to the group, and it's negative for trace carbon and chemotropic processes. Not really sure why I pronounced it that way. But the radiation begins rising as she only has a few moments to make probably 2 or 3 more samples. They tell her to come back as then she digs deeper as she sees something in there. Scanning it, they found a unicellular organism, an algae of sorts. So life has been found. It appears like something Precambrian, which, get ready for a tangent for the simple fact that it's interesting, and hopefully that's why you guys are here. Energy is what drives change, as you probably are well aware of. Earth being closer to the sun receives much more energy than the moons that are further out surrounding, like either Jupiter or Saturn. Life here has taken advantage of this constant energy, which has resulted in the earliest forms of life being like cyanobacteria and Precambrian algae, which those aren't really the earliest. There's much earlier forms, but these were early because they produced oxygen. These date back billions of years ago. This would actually inspire an extinction level event due to the waste product building up in the atmosphere, which was known as oxygen. These algae are incredibly simple, and since then, life has become much more complex, but it still exists to this day. So to find this on Europa would be absolutely wild, as this would show that life, while coming together more slowly due to the temperature differences, progresses along a similar pathway. This has nothing to do with the movie, but one of the more interesting aspects of any of this is when the sun actually enters its red giant phase, Europa is highly likely to become a water world that might be considerably warmer due to the sun blasting it with heat, which, the ice will melt and it'll basically become Subnautica out there. Absolutely horrific. This arrangement will last for probably a couple millions of years or so until the sun then explodes, taking out everything. But what's even more interesting is the changing of Titan. Titan is thick, and by that I mean it has a thick atmosphere. The sun expands and increases in luminosity. More of this energy will actually strike Titan. Now you can kind of think of it as a primordial Earth for now. As energy is added to the moon, which to be honest with you, Titan is only slightly smaller than Mars, so it's very likely just kind of a captured planet that got captured specifically by Saturn. This planet-sized moon will begin changing as Earth begins dying. 1 billion years in the future, likely due to its own sub-icy crust ocean, it would heat up as well, potentially causing the atmosphere to become thicker, in turn warming it enough potentially to turn it habitable at least for a little while. Absolutely wild that we are sitting here now kind of discussing how this could happen. And by the time it does happen, our bones will just be dust. Kind of makes you wonder if anything 4 billion years ago was maybe looking at Earth saying the same thing, and then now here we are. But anyhow, back to the movie. Still receiving high doses of radiation, she continues to sit there and closes her eyes. Gal, it is time to go back to the ship. Looking out, her pupil is now blown as she sees a light in the distance. We'll talk about this in a moment. They see nothing, as then she's obviously having problems. She continues walking as she starts thinking about how it's so beautiful. They don't know what this is about, as it could just be another microbe that's eating through the ice, because they don't see anything that she's seeing. She turns off her light as then she goes to get closer. She sees it through the ice. It's a type of bioluminescence. She's tweaking at this point, as she said the ground isn't stable. She's cracking through the ice as then she totally freaks out and stops responding as she begins sinking into the ocean well below her. Good. No thank you. So Seeing something in front of her, her helmet then goes out, and she died doing what she loved, being a marine biologist, I guess. They talk about how whatever it was reacted to the light on her helmet, which means it was a complex creature. When the next launch window happens, they're like, we need a GTFO, like, screw this, man. So it is now 12 days that they have been there. With nothing else happening, they then head back up to the orbiter, and as they count down, the booster isn't responding correctly as it's stuck at 30% fuel. They launch anyways to get out of there, as they can't keep it steady because it's not the right mixture, and the injectors are actually just straight melting. They decide to go back down to the surface instead, which I'm not really sure how you do with a rocket, and coming in hot, the captain then takes off his seatbelt saying he's gonna blow the water shielding, which should slow them down. Hitting hard, he's then yeeted into the ground because of that idea, because it was incredibly stupid. They survived the crash, at least some of them did, but this is one of those situations that you probably wish you just hadn't survived. Checking the rest of the crew, she sees if anything still works as the ship comes back online. Rosa then wakes up Andre by shaking his head, which is really good for any spinal injuries that may have happened, and then checking the captain, he's gone from that hit for sure. They have crashed back into the original landing zone, pretty ironic, and this zone was way more active according to Randy Daytona. The water shielding is now gone, which has left them exposed to the radiation, oxygen is leaking, and the heat is also being lost rapidly from their ship as well. The ice is melting here too, so they will begin going under fairly soon. Andre then says that if the propulsion system is still operational, he can get them into orbit. Yes, that seemed to work really well the first time, let me tell you. So it's now 10 hours later, and as they work on the lander, it has started shifting on the ice. They have broken through, according to Mr. Doom and Gloom here, and the fuel line that was partially frozen had caused the issue. They have to go outside to fix the ship with one person staying in to prep the engines. Getting them ready, they enter the airlock, as then she finishes her recording and then leaves it just in case it's ever found. Heading outside, the radiation is already high and the lander is already broken as then he heads down. The lander then shakes again as Daniel immediately goes missing. Daniel starts yelling as then we can see Andre's camera, and he tells him to turn off the lights as Andre says he just lost Daniel. The ice cracked beneath him and he was swallowed up. He was allegedly surrounded by light and then he was gone. Not ideal. So Andre then says he can't patch the fuel line, but he can fix the communication panel if he can just steal the parts from life support. That way they can at least send the information back to Earth. Looking down at the ice, he keeps calling out to Rosa as he walks. Opening the panel, he starts working on that as the light then appears behind him. As he works, the light is just sort of vibing there as he joins some wires, as then he tells her the system should start. Calling out to Andre one more time, she connects the wires and it begins working as the light makes money moves on him. Everything now begins uploading as the bioluminescence is all around the ship, but the cameras are dead. Of course they are. Andre is then pulled down into the ice as the data is uploaded back to Earth, leaving just Rosa left. Andre was a real one, and Rosa is pretty much useless. The radiation within the ship starts vibing as the creature appears to be just outside the door. As the ship begins sinking, it is then flooded, and man, think how cold that water would be. As it fills, we see the arm of something with a light on it appear, and it kind of seems like it's a cephalopod. Rosa then opened the airlock after communication had been reestablished and the mission had finally come back, but everyone at this point was gone. So we get a montage of the B movie that increases in speed each time the word B is said. Oh, wait a minute. We get a montage of the entire mission, and in the final image, they saw the alien. The universe is far more alive, but the crew is far more dead, and thus concludes Europa 1. So what was going on with the creature at the end? First, you need to understand how life evolves and progresses. Much like how humans are a byproduct of this world, this creature would be a byproduct of its. I think we actually see what it's doing based on the light it produces and the damage to the marine biologist's eye, as well as the quick glimpses others have seen, but the camera didn't. First off, radiation, more so focused radiation, is known to produce irradial tears in the eye. As we see with MB, which I should have been calling her the whole time, in her left eye, the pupil was blown because the iris was beginning to tear. This is supported by the fact that when Andre saw the creature, he only saw the light, but the camera didn't. Diffuse light would actually produce, or at least be produced by bioluminescence, would be picked up as the photons are released in all directions. However, much like cosmic rays hitting the iris, this creature is able to use focused radiation in an area to emit light. Dangerous to humanity, but given its time near the surface, getting pelted with radiation from Jupiter, it's clear its species has evolved to not only handle high radiation levels, but thrive in doing so, possibly also utilizing it in a way as to hunt. It's clear it's not a sapient species, but appears to be similar in some respects to cephalopods on Earth, and this may indicate a rather large brain and problem-solving abilities. What I imagine is there are other species down there in the waters, and this was simply one that hunts near the surface. For one reason or another, this area of Europa appears to be a hunting ground for its highly radioactive creatures that also have essentially saturated the area with radiation because of that, and this radiation is actually emitted emitted from the ends of its tentacles and its center mass. Because it can be directed, this might be how it searches the pitch black waters for food, and when coming across something that produces light, it assumes it to likely be food, which humans wearing a spacesuit looks like food because of the light. The radiation bouncing off anything or possibly even causing it to glow when it does hit it might be an indication that it's like, oh, here's food. It may also be that this creature comes up to the surface in order to absorb radiation to emit in order to hunt. Really, it's no different from humans absorbing sunlight in order to produce vitamin D. Its body just works at a higher capacity to store and release radiation. Now, could life like this exist? It is entirely possible. We find extremophiles here on Earth that utilize radiation all the time. Right now, there's a black fungus growing in Reactor 4 of Chernobyl that uses radiation in order to make nutrition for itself. So finding something that is radiation resistant and able to use it, considering the surface is blasted with radiation from Jupiter all the time, it's not only possible, but if life does exist here, it's fairly plausible to assume somehow it's either super resistant to radiation or it may just use radiation to a varying degree, more so if it's near the surface. Ultimately, a creature this complex existing below the surface definitely indicates there is a much more active ecosystem lower under the surface as well. And given it's liquid, it may be the planet is incredibly active with hydrothermal vents, so inversely, the lower you go, the warmer the waters could become to potentially even downright soupy, making it totally possible for more complex life to be there as well. Really, there's only one way to find out. We need to send a mission to Europa and make sure that there are handles on the outside of the airlocks. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. This movie was absolutely baller despite the fact that there was some really stupid moves made, but hey, it is what it is. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and Roanoke Games link, as well as the live stream in the description. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, huge thank you to our astronaut, Bananas Are Epic. Thank you, my man. Next, I'd like to thank our astrophysicist, Death Dancer. Thank you as well. And I'd also like to thank our scientists, Dakota23, Invictus Echo, Metric System. Ocean Gate was a cover-up for an anglerfish attack, Official Texan, and Stutz. And the rest of my patrons, you guys are ballers too. Your help goes a long way and is greatly appreciated. But all right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.